And welcome to the Howard Eskin Show. A little bit of a different day for me, and I'm going to get into that quickly before what to me is a really special guest, Rich Gannon. Can't believe how many years he played in the NFL, but long career and obviously a good career. But we'll get to Rich. But first, I want to acknowledge that tough day for me because this afternoon I lost one of my best friends. Our family lost one of our best friends, and that was my dog, Lila. Uh, Long haired Chihuahua. She was spunky. She was fun. Dogs are so lovable. And for the most part, they listen to you. But she was going downhill today, and then we took her to a place called Pinnacle, and they knew it was time, and it's really sad when you lose someone like that. And she just was a lot of fun, and I'll miss her. But I wanted to make sure that I did the show because you can't just sit there and think about those things all the time. And there's a lot of things that I wanted to talk about tonight after I was done with Rich, and I'll touch on them briefly, but we'll do it mostly on Saturday. But first, I want to get to, and I consider my guest special, but I do consider Rich Gannon a special guest. Rich Gannon, former quarterback for NFL teams. Let me welcome in Rich Gannon. But before we welcome in Rich, let me just mention our sponsors, our partners are very important. And I'm not going to read the spots tonight because I couldn't put everything that I always put into them. But I always want to thank Stillwell Financial Advisors. Jeff Stillwell knows his stuff. If you have any questions, 732-343-0813. I want to thank Audi of Westchester, which is a special deal on financing right now on a lot of new model Audi vehicles. And I want to thank Piazza Property Pros, the people that can redesign your property, put you in a pool, and do a lot of good things. And those people are important to this program. Now, let me welcome in my guest, and that would be Rich Gannon. Special guy and a really good guy and a hell of a quarterback for quite a few years. Rich, thanks for joining the program. Thanks very much.
Howard, it's so good to be with you, bro. I am so sorry for your loss. Animals, particularly dogs, they're like family members to us, and it's so hard to put them down. So I certainly, I feel for you, brother. That's not easy, but
No,
thank
it
you
was
so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was tough, but and just you will be fun to talk to, and obviously, kind of takes your mind away from. We all deal with tough things in life, and this will take me away from that because I'm going to have some fun with you. All right, 17 years. When you come out of the University of Delaware, can you ever imagine? I don't know where you were projected in the draft when you came out of Delaware, but can you imagine that you would have played, or how many years did you think, if you could play in the NFL, that you were going to play in the NFL?
Well, Howard, I went to St. Joe's Prep in Philly. I wasn't highly recruited. It wasn't like Penn State and Notre Dame were knocking down the door, right? So I went down the road there, down the 95 South down to Delaware, and I was fortunate to be a 3-year starter, played for Tubby Raymond and
Yep.
Delaware wing T offense, which honestly it wasn't ideal if you had aspirations of being an NFL quarterback. I mean, it was very basic when it came to the passing game. So when I got to the league in 1987, I had a lot to learn, but it was a journey just to get there. I got invited to the combine. I was a 4th-round draft pick. The New England Patriots took me in the 87 draft, and they didn't even want me to be a quarterback. That's how bad things were. And Bucko Kilroy, who was in
Yeah.
Philly,
Yep.
Bucko Kilroy was friends with Leo Carlin, the old ticket manager for the
Yes.
Philadelphia Eagles. And so
Yep.
I called Leo. Leo was like an uncle to me. And I said, look, they made a mistake. He called Bucko Kilroy. 6 days later, I got traded to the Minnesota Vikings, where I began my career.
So I didn't realize you were drafted by New England, and they never even took you to camp, right?
No, so like the day after the draft, I called him. I called Dick Steinberg, who was the general manager at the time. I said, "Look, I think you made a mistake. I'm going to go to law school. I'm just not going to come to mini camp because I'm a quarterback." So They never brought me in for a workout, anything like that, and I just thought, it was a mistake. And so I was fortunate. I went to Minnesota. They had two veteran quarterbacks, Tommy Kramer and Wade Wilson. Both were, at one point Pro Bowl quarterbacks, and so I got a chance to watch and listen and learn a little bit before I finally got a chance to play. But it was never really my team. I spent 6 years in Minnesota. We had some good teams, but I just never really felt like ownership or the head coach was really believed in me. And so I got traded after the 92 season to the Washington Redskins. They were a bad team. Joe Gibbs just retired and Richie Pettibone took over. They went 4
Mhm.
that year. They got rid of all the quarterbacks, Mark Rippon, myself, and Terry Conklin. And then I was out of football a year. I had shoulder surgery before I went to Kansas City in 95. Spent 4 years at Marty Schottenheimer there. Played on some really good teams. I mean, gosh, we went 13-3 twice. We had Marcus Allen and Neil Smith and Derek Thomas and Tony Gonzalez. We had a team that was good enough to win a Super Bowl. Unfortunately, I think Marty made some mistakes when it came to crunch time.
You know what? When you got to a Super Bowl towards the end of your career, you were an MVP towards the end of your career. What was it? The team? Was it the coach? What changed to get you to the level that obviously you got to win the award and get to the Super Bowl?
It wasn't until I was 33 years old that an organization, the Oakland Raiders, really reached out and gave me that opportunity, gave me the keys to the car. It was really John Gruden. John Gruden had to convince Al Davis that I was the right guy at the right time for the Raiders. They had Jeff George. They were on the hook for him for a big contract, and they decided to cut ways with him and bring me in. And at that time, I was kind of a vagabond. I bounced around the league a little bit, and when I got the opportunity to play, I played pretty well, but it was never really my team. And so, '99, I got the opportunity to play. I was a Pro Bowler that year. I went to 4 straight Pro Bowls. Went to 3 AFC. We won 3 straight AFC West titles. Went to 2 AFC Championship games. Went to a Super Bowl. So we kind of had it rolling before Al Davis pulled the rug out from under us and traded away our head coach, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who we lost in the Super Bowl. So that was it was not an easy place to play. I always said it was hard to make hard to overcome some of the adversity in our own building before we had to go on the road and play teams like Denver and Kansas City.
John Gruden, I think I got to know him when he was an assistant here with the Eagles. Have a great story that I tell people. Ricky Waters' girlfriend aired him out when Ricky didn't have enough carries. I was happened to be standing there outside the locker room, and she just aired him out. But and he just rolled with it, John. But the one thing that John Gruden, I think, could always do is not only identify quarterbacks, but get them to play at a better level. Did you feel that as a player under John Gruden?
Yeah, it was a match made in heaven. It was somebody that was similar in age. I think we both felt like we had a chip on our shoulder. We both had something to prove. And he believed in me. That was really important. I believed in him. We had great chemistry. I think we saw the game the same way, and I just we just hit the road, we hit the ground running. I would say I would agree with you about I think we even today's NFL. I think when you look at organizations that historically struggle, and I'm not talking about for a season or two, I'm talking about for decades. They miss on a couple big areas, and I think when it comes to the quarterback, the identification, who in the building is identifying who those players are, whether it's in free agency or the draft. Are we identifying who the right player is, the right fit? And then once we identify them, can we get them in the building, whether it's free agency, whether it's drafting that player? And then once we get them in the building, do we have the coaches and do we have the tools in our toolbox to be able to train and develop the young quarterback? And there's quarterbacks that have been good. Baker Mayfield, great example. Sam Darnold. You look at some of these guys that they're playing Baker Mayfield especially. They're playing some really good football, and all of a sudden, like Cleveland kicked him to the curb, Carolina kicked him to the curb. Like, why wasn't it a good fit for them? I think he's matured both physically and I think mentally, and I think he's a different player. But sometimes, as a young quarterback, you have to go through adversity before you begin to figure things out.
Well, with John Gruden, I remember Brad Johnson. They won the Super Bowl with Brad Johnson as the quarterback, correct?
Yep.
Obviously, Brad Johnson was a nice quarterback, but you don't think of Brad Johnson, and I don't even know how many people remember him, as a Super Bowl winning quarterback.
Or Trent Dilfer, for that matter.
Right. Yeah. So, what is it that John Gruden identifies in a player and helps, and obviously playing under, probably the best coach he's ever played under, in the pros. What is it that he does that he can bring it out and put the quarterback, I love this term, put him in the right position? What is it that he does?
Well, I think it starts with his work ethic. I think he leaves no stone unturned. I've always felt like when I went to the game, I was the most prepared player on the field. He does a great job breaking down coordinators, breaking down schemes and coverages and things like that. I think he's a very creative and innovative play caller. I think when you look at Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan, guys like that trained under him, I think that's really where he was. I mean, he was the top of his game when it came to calling plays, being aggressive, putting the quarterback in control. I was in control at the line of scrimmage. I could change protections. I could change plays. I had audibles. We could go from a strong side run to a weak side pass. We were doing some really creative things in Oakland. I think all good quarterbacks want that control. You as a play caller, you can't always guess right. You can look at the statistics. You can look at situational football, and you can say, hey, second and long versus Vic Fangio is probably some form of 5-man pressure 70% of the time. Well, you call a blitz beater and he drops 8 in coverage and rushes 3. You have a bad play. If you don't have a quarterback that can get you out of a bad play into a good play, it's a tough way to make a living. And I think John was out in front of it when it came to putting the tools in the toolbox for quarterbacks to be able to play at the line of scrimmage.
You know what? When you think about that, today's game is controlled so much by the offensive coordinator. How many quarterbacks do you think really have the ability in today's game to change the play at the line of scrimmage?
So that's a great point, Howard. And I think when you really watch football closely and you really study it, you can tell the quarterbacks who are changing protections. You can tell quarterbacks who are making the Mike declaration. Some of these coaches want to take it off the young quarterback and put it in the hands of the center, who's crouched down and can't see the rotations of the safety, can't see the corners, can't see some of the perimeter pressure. So that's never a good thing. And I think you can tell the quarterbacks that have the ability to get out of bad plays and into good plays. So you look at Matthew Stafford, look at Patrick Mahomes, you look at Aaron Rodgers. You look at these veteran quarterbacks that have the tools in the toolbox to be able to not waste plays. That's what it's all about. At the end of the day, if we call a strong side run and it's an 8-man front and we don't really have much of a chance, why run the play? Why waste the play? We only get 60 or 65 of them in a game. I think the good coordinators, the good teachers, they have a system in place where you're not just guessing. We're not just calling plays and hoping that the defense is in the right front of the right coverage. And I think you can tell when you really study football which quarterbacks have that control at the line of scrimmage.
When working, obviously you watch a lot of games working for Sirius NFL radio. Obviously, I mean, you need to because
I watch them all.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, I watch every game.
And that's really a good thing. So let me get down first to the Eagles. The Eagles, up until last week, didn't score a point for 3 straight games in the second half. That is almost impossible. Then Jalen Hurts has probably the game of his career so far. And what is it do you think changed for the Eagles for that to happen?
Well, I think it didn't happen overnight. I think that there's a lot going on when you study the Eagles' offense. I went back and looked at some numbers earlier today. They're not playing very well. I think it starts up front. I don't think they've been as dominant up front as they've been in the past. They were a bunch of bullies. They knocked people backwards. You had a running back last year that could have easily set the single season rushing record. He's averaging 3.3 yards per carry. He's only averaging 88 yards a game. They're 30th in rushing. Can you imagine the Philadelphia Eagles 30th in rushing?
No, it's amazing.
So, and his touches are down. I mean, I think he's only averaging about what did I see? He's averaging 16 carries a game, so 52 yards rushing. So they're out of sync. They're one of the worst third down teams in football, and that's a big problem as well. So, they're not getting as many cracks at it. And I think, you got A.J. Brown. He's only averaging about 4 catches a game. And so everything is when you're not running the ball well, when you're not winning on the early downs, when you get behind the down and distance and you're struggling on third down, the numbers just don't add up. They're not scoring as much. They're not as effective. They're not as efficient. They're not as explosive. The explosive plays, you got to ask yourself, with the exception of last week, we saw a couple of big ones of Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, but you got to ask yourself, what's wrong with this offense? I would say the good news is it reminds me a little bit of the situation in Kansas City. They weren't playing really well. They lost a couple in a row. They lost to Jacksonville. Everybody goes, what's wrong with the Chiefs? All of a sudden, you get Rashee Rice back, and all of a sudden they drop a house on the Raiders, and they start looking like a different team. The good news for the Eagles are they're 5-2, and they've not played their best football on either side of the ball. I mean, that's something to celebrate. Like, hey, we're not even playing our best football. We're able to go on the road and beat the Minnesota Vikings. So, I think there's a lot to uncover there. I think I think offensively they've got to find a way. Like when I watch the Philadelphia Eagles offense right now, like Saquon Barkley doesn't look right to me. Like I do the eyeball test, like to me physically, and he just doesn't look as explosive. He doesn't look uh, he doesn't look as comfortable. I've seen more runs this year from the Philadelphia Eagles, and I think I saw all of last year that barely make it back to the line of scrimmage. They got a lot of negative runs. And so you got to ask yourself, what's going on? You got a new play caller for the third straight year. That's part of it. But I think when you're asking what is their identity as an offense, I think they're still working on it.
Okay, when you get people in Philadelphia, and I know you don't live here now, but you probably hear a lot of it. They just kill the offensive coordinator, Kevin Petula. Players got to make plays.
Of course.
It's just, but they blame him. But I don't necessarily think, well, when a team is good, you're going to lose your coach. You're going to lose some coaches. Detroit lost a coach, but
Two
they're still
coaches.
pretty good. Yeah, two coaches, and they're still pretty. They're still very good. They might be. I don't know if they're the best team in the NFC, but they might be the best team in the NFC. But you can't always blame it on the coach. If you had to identify a problem with the Eagles' offense, what would you say it is?
There's no question there's growing pains with a new coordinator. I think you've got a quarterback that has handled it really well for the third straight season, and it's not easy on Jalen Hurts. I think he's got the temperament and the demeanor that you love at that position. Doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low. He's very focused. He's able to turn the page. If I'm going to identify one problem right now, it's their inability to run the football and dominate people physically. I mean, you're still the best team in the NFL when it comes to red zone offense. They finish in that part of the field. The tush push is certainly a big part of it. Third down passing numbers I talked about it. They're 27th and third down conversion rate at around 34%. But their inability to run the football, their inability to control the line of scrimmage, the inability to deliver sucker punches. I mean, that's what they did last year. They just bullied people. I mean, they slide. That group up front was just big, bad, and nasty. And I just think right now, that the five of them, and when you go back and look at them, Dickerson's been a little banged up. Johnson's had some stuff that he's dealt with, but collectively as a group, they have not been as dominant. And I think that's had an impact on the quarterback. I think it's had an impact on the play caller. They're getting behind in the down and distance. They're getting in some of these third and not necessarily manageable situations. And that's not really who they are or who they want to be offensively.
Well, other teams are obviously stacking the box.
Sure.
Okay. They say, hey, Jalen, you're going to have to throw the football. And they're okay with that. Because up until the last game, most of the time he just threw down the edges where there wasn't many throws over the center of the field. Last week they had some good throws to the center of the field. Why do you think when they put him in that position that he doesn't throw as well in the middle of the field?
Well, you have to go back and look at all the cut-ups. I would simply say this. If you talk to defensive coordinators, and I talk to them a lot, and I've done a lot of games. I've not done a ton of Eagle games over the years, but I've done some games when Jalen was playing. And of course, I've talked to a lot of defensive coordinators. The book on Jalen is like, let's stop the run. If you're playing you, let's stop the run. Let's put that. Let's make this quarterback function as a pocket passer. Let's not allow him to run around. Let's keep him in the pocket. Let's set the edge. Let's force him to sit in there on third down and make it difficult throws. And I think that's kind of what you want to do. I think he's had some difficult time processing. He's had some difficult time getting to the third and fourth in the progression. I think he's had a difficult time sometimes throwing the ball in the middle of the field and with the full field reads. He's had a difficult time in certain occasions of what we call RCE, recognition, communication, and execution when it comes to the blitz, like identifying where it's coming from. Are we picked up? Are we not? Are we short? We got a hot? We got a built in? Are we going to change the protection? And I think some of that has been a factor as well. Not to take away from the fact I think he's an incredibly talented player. But they want to stay on schedule offensively, and that means running the football, having manageable numbers on third down, play action game, taking shots down the field to Devontae and to AJ Brown. We're utilizing the tight ends. I mean, doing what they do in terms of some of the perimeter runs and those type of things. But like anybody else, I mean, that's their identity offensively. And when they get out of rhythm and they're struggling running the football, which they are now, and they're really bad on third down. You look at the numbers I mentioned to you, they're 27th. They're converting just about a third of their opportunities. That's not good enough. Then it starts to pile up on you, and more of the onus goes on the quarterback to make those decisions and to get us to the next set of downs. And that hasn't really happened all that much for the Eagles this year.
You know what? This last week, and I noticed it, and then Kevin Petula was asked at his Tuesday news conference. I think Nick Sirianni might have been asked, but Nick's a great guy, and I think he's a very good coach, and he's got a great personality. But he's been muzzled by public relations not to say anything, so he says nothing. All right. So, but asked why they were more under center. The quarterback was more under center. And I know for years, I don't think Jalen was comfortable under center because he couldn't see the defense as well. So now more because the play action's better. When the quarterback's under center, how important is it for the Eagles to continue that to try to keep the defense a little off balance when you have the quarterback? How important is for the quarterback to be under center for play action?
Well, it's very important, but it's even more important for the running game, right? You really limit yourself when you're in the gun all the time in the running game. You talk to any good running back, they want to have their heels at 7. They want to be in the eye. They want to be able to head downhill. They want to be able to see it. They want to be able to set that defense. And it's a lot more complicated. You're limited when you're in the gun and the back is offset, or if he's in the queue in some type of pistol formation, it limits what you can do. And I think it makes it a little bit more difficult for running backs. They don't want that. They want the ball in their hands early. They want to see the defense. They want to be able to see those deuce blocks and guys getting up on the second level and be able to really, have a shot at it. And I just think that that's part of it when you talk about why maybe he's under center a little bit more. Hey, we want to get the running game going. We want to help this running back. We got the most talented running back in the league, but we're not able to run the football. Get the quarterback under center. Let's get him some carries. Let's start heading downhill. Let's start knocking people backwards in the running game. That's going to help us with the play action game. That's going to help us on third down. I think when you look at the Eagles' first down numbers, that's a big story. They have not been nearly as effective on first down. And I think a big part of it is their struggles in the running game.
Okay. So now you look at the Eagles, they're 5-2, and there's no team in the NFC with a better record, different 5-2s, but it's amazing how they all kind of fell at 5-2 and different things have happened, any one of them. When you look at it and the fact that you're looking at all the games, who do you think are the best, let's say, 4 teams in the NFC?
Well, I would say a couple things. I think first and foremost, let's look at the division. I think everybody has issues right now. You look at Dallas, they're 3-3-1. Their defense isn't very good. Okay. You look at the Washington Commanders, they're 3-4. Their quarterback, Jaden Daniels, he's hurt. He ain't going to play this week.
Right.
And he's been dealing with that hamstring. And even when he's been healthy, they just don't look the part. I mean, they don't look as good and as explosive as they were a year ago. And then you look at the Giants. Everyone's excited about Jackson Dart. They should be. He's a talented quarterback. He's brought some juice, some energy, some confidence to that operation, but they're still 2-5, and they've got a ways to go. So when you look at the NFC, I think the Eagles are the best team in the East. There's no question about it. I think that NFC North is very interesting. I still think the Lions are the best team, but last year we had 3 playoff teams come out of the North. The Vikings right now, what's holding them back is the quarterback position, but Green Bay's still a good football team. You look at the NFC South, I think the Buccaneers are clearly the best team there. And I tell you, the NFC West, Howard, that's the one to keep an eye on because, Seattle's got Sam Darnold. They're playing some good football right now. The Rams and Matthew Stafford. Stafford's having an MVP type season through 7 weeks. And San Francisco, when they get healthy, I think they've got a chance to be a good football team as well.
Okay. When you look at a quarterback, and you mentioned 2 of them during the show that are reincarnated. I'll use the word reincarnated. What is it? And I'm just going to deal with, because you talked about the NFC West. I'm going to deal with Sam Darnold. What the heck has happened to him? He has turned into what looks like, and made Seattle a good team, a good quarterback. What has happened to him?
Well, Howard, you've been around this game a lot longer than I have, so you've seen it. And I would just simply tell you, there's very few quarterbacks that can come into our league like Dan Marino and just have immediate success. Even Peyton Manning went 3-13 in his first year and threw more interceptions than touchdowns. There's usually some growing pains. There's usually some adversity, right? We talked about what happened with Baker Mayfield. Got kicked to the corner in Cleveland, got kicked to the corner in Carolina, had to go out on a Wednesday night and play for the Rams in a game the next day. And then he goes to Tampa Bay, and they tell him, hey, you might have to battle to be for that job. So Sam Darnold, very similar, right? Goes to the Jets. He plays before he's ready to play. He struggles. The team struggles. He begins to lose confidence. The team loses confidence. The fans start booing him. It's not an easy place to play. And they kick him to the curb, and he goes to Carolina. Same thing. He's down there at Matt Rule. That doesn't go well. And then they get rid of him. And then he goes to, I think going to San Francisco really helped him that year that he was there with Kyle Shanahan. And then he goes to Minnesota last year with Kevin O'Connell. I think it all began to make sense to him. I think a head coach that put his arm around him, a head coach that believed in him, a good football team, a good defense, a pretty good supporting cast. And all of a sudden, the guy starts to gain confidence. The guy's swagger starts to come back. There was no question he had the arm talent. There's no question he had the athleticism, the feet, to be able to move and create and manufacture some offense. But now all of a sudden, he's cleaned up his game. He's not throwing it to the other team as much. He understands ball security. He's better situationally, whether it's third down, whether it's red zone, 2 minute. He's taking better care of the football. Now, all of a sudden, we start saying to ourselves, wait a minute, this guy looks like he's a player.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes time at that position, but we live in a day and age, and certainly we live in an NFL where we don't have the patience like we once did. We draft them, we want to play them, and we want results now. And that just simply isn't the case.
Players, and one player came back. I know he's not going to play this week. Brandon Graham's not going to play. Again, I once you miss the game, especially at those physical positions, how tough it's tough for any player to come back after you've missed time and you're not at camp, maybe a waste because you don't play that much anymore, but practice is important, obviously. How difficult is it for a player to come back after having that out of retirement, after having that time off?
Really difficult, right? We're talking about a guy that's 37 years old. He played 16 years in the league. He's a fan favorite. He's a very popular guy in that locker room. He's a leader. He's a tough guy. He's all the things you want in a player. The concern that I would have as a general manager, as a head coach, or as Vic Fangio, the defensive coordinator, where is he physically? What has he been doing for the last year? What has he been doing for the last 3 months? It's one thing to go to the gym and work out. It's another thing to have the cleats on and be cutting and conditioning and change of direction and explosiveness and taking on 300-pound tackles. And so the concern you have is how soon before he's ready to play, how many snaps can he play in a game, and what type of production are we going to get out of him? And is he going to have a soft tissue injury? He's going to get a groin, he's going to get a hamstring, a calf injury, because he just simply hasn't done it. And that's always the concern when you bring back a player like Brandon Graham.
You made some really interesting points that he kind of physically had little physical problems the last couple of years. I just don't know that. And last year, the other thing is he only played 20 plays a snap. How many plays can he play this year? They lost a defensive end who quit. But how many plays can he play this year? Physically, your body just doesn't say yes.
Right. So if you can get that same number or a little bit more, that's a real bonus. I think you have somebody who understands the system, somebody who understands the culture, somebody who understands, what playing in Philadelphia is all about. And look, we talked a lot the last few minutes about the offense. The defense hasn't played up to their standard either. You look where they're at with the defense. They have 11 sacks in 7 games. They got 7 takeaways in 7 games. And this is a defense that was so dominant the last couple of years in terms of creating negative plays. The hits on the quarterbacks, the sacks, the takeaways, the forced fumbles, all those numbers are down. You look at their 23rd in total defense. They're 19th against the pass. They're 22nd against the rush. They're 20th in scoring defense. I mean, they're the only where they've been pretty decent is red zone defense. They've forced people to kick some field goals in that part of the field. 26th in third down defense. So I know Vic Fangio. I know him well. You know him,
Good
Howard.
guy.
He's not sleeping well at night right now because that's not their standard in Philadelphia.
Okay, if you had to identify, they're probably not. Well, you pointed out not getting as good a pass rush. In the secondary, Quinyon Mitchell is obviously excellent, but how much of an issue are some of the other areas for the Eagles defense?
Well, I think the inconsistent pass rush to play great defense in the NFL, you need 2 things. You need great cover corners, and you need guys that can impact the passer. You need great pass rushers. And I think right now, when you look at the Eagles, we talked about the negative plays are way down. The numbers are off from where they've been in the past. I think part of it is like we talk about complementary football. When the offense has been like when you look at the Eagles last year, they bullied people in the first half of games. They had big leads at halftime, and they came out in the second half. The teams had to throw the football to get back into it. So now you're not having to play the run. You know what I mean? You're able to pin your ears back and get after these quarterbacks. That's not the case anymore. They're playing from behind. They're playing in these tight games. They're not they're not bullying people offensively, and so that has an impact on what they're doing defensively as well. I would simply say though they're not as dominant in terms of getting to the quarterback. They've given up some explosives. They haven't been as consistent on the edges, and that factors into I think really where they rank defensively.
Rich, and I'm going to a few more questions. The coaches you had, we already identified, I think, that John Gruden was your best head coach, correct?
I played for Marty Schottenheimer. He's pretty good too.
Oh, okay. All right. So, of the qualities, and I'm not going to ask you to name, okay, you've identified two good coaches. What makes a head coach a good head coach? And I think the players respond to Nick Sirianni, and that's why they've gotten a lot out of it. People in Philadelphia, they made fun of all the things he said. Well,
Sure.
those players listened to him. So
They made fun of all the things he said until you started taking him to Super Bowls. Then they don't make fun of him anymore.
yeah, I know. What is it that a head coach, or let's say Schottenheimer and Gruden did, and we'll leave the other coaches out, that made them coaches that were winners?
I think coaches that are can convey a message, coaches that can communicate, coaches that have a plan, coaches that can put together a good staff. I think coaches that can hold players accountable, coaches that create a culture and an environment that's conducive to winning. I think that's a big part of it. I think communication is really, really important. I think the ability to identify who the good players are and to get out in front of problems. I think in game adjustments, coaches that are really good, on Sundays or on game days where they can, make tough decisions, make changes to the plan, not wait till halftime to make an adjustment. Coaches that are great communicators in terms of with the coordinators, the special teams, the head coach, the defense coordinator, the offense coordinator. I think Nick does a great job. I think the players respect him. I think the players play hard for him. I think he makes it fun. I think that they've got a great thing going, and I just think that he does a terrific job.
Hey, I want to touch on the University of Delaware because I kind of followed them a little bit this year. They actually seem like they're a I don't know if they're a great team, but they're a good team. Uh, do you follow them at all, the
Oh
University?
yeah, I've been to a couple games this year. So, they made the jump this year. They jumped up to the Conference USA, and they're doing a great job. I went out to Colorado, saw them play against Dion's guys out there, and what impressed me the most was the way they handled that situation. They didn't back down. They were very physical. They didn't necessarily have the same team speed that the Buffaloes had in terms of on the perimeter, but their mechanics, their game day mechanics, the communication. I thought the play entry, there wasn't taking delay games, timeouts, those type of things. It was well done. They had a chance. It was a very competitive game for 40 minutes, and then they kind of got away from them at the end. But they just lost to Western Kentucky a couple of weeks ago on a Friday night. But I'm telling you, they're going to do some good things down there. They get Ryan Carty's done a nice job. The president, the athletic director, they're all on board with this move, and good football is here to stay in the great state of Delaware.
You know what? Even with the NIL, and I think that's going to really hurt college football. The mid majors or those other teams, they're not going to be able to compete at a higher level, but they can compete within the people that they play, those kinds of teams. And Casey Keeler, I don't think you played for him, did you?
No, but I know him really well. Yeah, I know
Yeah.
him.
Yeah. I talked to him before the Temple games, and I think he's done a really good job with Temple. They're a better team this year, too. So there's two teams in the area that are actually good football teams that you never expect that in college football.
Well, as you know, the Northeast is the hotbed of talent. I mean, you just look at, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Virginia, Delaware, that whole area, Maryland, there's a lot of great players. And when the Big Ten comes in and the SEC comes in, there's still a lot of great players left. And that's why I think programs like Temple and Delaware can still compete.
Yeah, and they're both doing a good job. Hey, Rich, Sirius NFL Radio. Obviously, by watching all the games, you know what you're talking about. But as a quarterback, I always identify quarterbacks know what's going on because they see so many things, offense and defense. Catchers and pitchers
Yeah.
in baseball know what's going on because they're into every pitch during the game. So obviously, you know what you're talking about. Who is it that you work with on Sirius NFL Radio?
Bruce Murray. I do a show. It's let me take my time straight. 12 to 3 Eastern on NFL Radio Channel 88, and it's all NFL. We talk. We get players and coaches and guests, but mostly just NFL football around the clock.
Did Brady Quinn go somewhere? He was
He
working.
did. Brady did it for a while. Yeah, well, I took a sabbatical when I was doing the games on C. I did it for 7 years, and I did the NFL games on CBS for 18 years, and I was on the road so much. I just got the radio got to be too much, and so I gave it a little bit of break. A couple other guys filled in. Brady filled in for a while. Then I came back about 4 or 5 years ago and been doing it. And so like I said, I can do it from my home. We've got a home in Ocean City, New Jersey. We spent a lot of time back east. Both my daughters are in back east, one in New York and one in Delaware. So we're getting back east a lot more. And I'm always excited and love to see the success the Eagles are having.
Well, when you get back east, I'd love to get together with you and maybe go to a game.
It'd be great. You're the best.
All right. Now, you are, and I appreciate it, and I thank you so much. I love the guests that I have on know what they're talking about, and and they're good people. And I think good people is important when you have a guest too, and you're one of those guys.
You're the best, brother. Thank you. I tell the story all the time. I grew up listening to you, man. I come home from school, my bedroom, I listen to you, and I listen to those crazy callers and you yelling at them. That's how I grew up on Philadelphia radio. You're an icon, my man. I love you.
Okay, I love you too. Thanks. All right, see you later, Rich. Rich Gannon. I had known that he listened to me. It's amazing how many people. You never know who's out there. You never know who's out there, and it's a shame that radio's dying, and podcasts are the wave of the future. It's just, yeah, and I see somebody said Brady Quinn took Mark Sanchez's job. He moved to Fox. I was on with Brady Quinn one time on the NFL on Sirius NFL Radio, but it's just it's really kind of amazing when you think about. You never know who's out there. You never know who's out there. It's just, yeah, communication is important. I see it. RG shows what wins. It's communication. Communication is important. There's a lot of things he did. Kind of, talked about the issues with the Eagles' offense. All those numbers, and you can't go by one game. I mean, they had the Eagles, they played Minnesota. They got a break. Minnesota played horrible defense, but nonetheless, it worked. It worked out well for him. All right, a couple of things I want to address. First off, our winner last week to win a Mike Schmidt autographed baseball, Brian Gallagher. Brian Gallagher is the winner. The question was, and the answers were ridiculous. The question was, who did A.J. Brown identify on his Mount Rushmore of Eagles? Kelsey, Foles, T.O., and himself. What's the matter? Reggie Brown's not good enough? I mean, it's just, and he didn't mention, he did not mention Jalen Hurts, but for whatever reason. And congratulations, Brian, and thanks for being a part of the show. You know what? I wasn't going to do a question tonight because with my loss today, I didn't know that I was as into the show. Talking to Rich got me really into the show. Really got me into the show. So I might do it. There's a couple of things I want to address, and I'm not going to get. I don't know that I'll get too deep into it. First of all, I just want to thank our partners again, Stillwell Financial Advisors. Jeff Stillwell is the man. If you have any, you want to, put your money to good use, Jeff Stillwell can really, really help you out. 732-343-0813. And we have other partners too, and that would be Audi Westchester. Great deal now with financing up to 72 months on remodeled new models. A5, Q5, SQ5, Q5 Sportback, SQ5 Sportback, Q6 e-tron rear wheel drive. Audi Westchester, 1421 Wilmington Pike. And you can check them out online, AudiWestchester.com. And Piazza Property Pros. You want to do something with your property to really kind of spruce it up for company that comes over, whether it's a pool, whether it's maintenance, whether it's landscaping, whatever it is, Piazza Property Pros can do the job, and their number and can do it well. 610 566 2608, 610 566 2608, piazzaoutdoor.com. All right, there was a story out today, and I wanted to ask Rich, and that was my fault. I forgot to ask him. Jason Kelsey story. Oh, he might come back. I would think Jason Kelsey was a great player when he played football for the Eagles. A great player. However, he's been out of it for what, a year and a half? He used to wake up Monday mornings, couldn't even get out of bed. He was so sore. And he was beat up, and it just there's no way. I mean, do these guys just want attention? Now, I saw Patty asked about Brandon Graham. I wish the best for Brandon. I don't know, in my opinion, that that's the right decision, basically because he went out on top. He went out on top. He won a Super Bowl. He left. His body's in good shape. Sometimes your body's trying to tell you, and he had some nagging injuries, some nagging injuries over the last couple of years. I don't know that it's a good idea, but he's intrigued. He likes the attention. He likes playing, but sometimes your body tells us, you know what? Maybe it's time. I remember, and Charles Barkley is one. Uh, Charles Barkley came back to play with, what was it, the Houston Rockets? And his body was trying to tell him something. And his last year, I think it was his knee. He tore up his knee, and then he was done. Sometimes your body tells you, it's time when you're a physical player, and we're talking about two positions. And Jason Kelsey's, I would be more than shocked if Jason Kelsey came back. More than shocked. I think that's just an attention grab, and I think it's bullshit. All right. I think it's just total BS. But as far as Brandon Graham, not that far removed. He's not going to play in Sunday's game against the Giants. Then the Eagles have a bye week, and maybe he can play the next week. Sometimes your body is going to tell you when he gets out there on the practice field, it's going to feel good. But in a game, it's just so much different. And there's another thing that I want to deal with. And AJ Brown, I just AJ, just play the game, man. Just play the game. He made a comment, and it was posted. If you watch that game, talking about the Eagles game last week against Minnesota, you'll understand why I lost my cool. I wasn't mad at my teammates. I was mad at the way the refs controlled that game, like they wanted us to lose. What? Come on, man. They ignored clear penalties, looked the other way on obvious calls, and still treated us like we were the problem. But no matter how much they tried to tilt the field, we still won because in Philadelphia, we don't just play for points, we fight for fairness. Okay. Let me just break the news to you. The officials, if they're poor in both ways. They're poor in both ways. And, Quinyon Mitchell is a great cornerback. Great, terrific. I mean, he does everything you want a corner to do. But how many times, and I've seen it on TV, and they show it, they never mention it. When a receiver kind of gets by him a little bit, he grabs the guy's jersey. All you have to do is grab it for a couple of seconds. That's a penalty. That is a penalty. If the pass is in the air, it's interference. If the pass is not in the air, it's holding. I mean, it's a simple penalty, and they never call it on him. So I'm not saying that they should. And on the tush push, I didn't ask Rich about the tush push. It's like the tush push. Half the time, they're probably offsides or illegal motion or whatever the hell it is, and it's hard to call. So I don't want to hear about the officials. The officials have issues both ways. Saturday, there's some things I want to talk about on Saturday. and we're going to do it. Not going to do it tonight, but I want to talk about the announcers and the public that say Otani, great player, pitcher and hitter. I mean, he does everything well. Was the greatest game ever? I'm not sure about that now. Rick Wise, who was a pitcher for the Phillies, who the Phillies ended up trading after the year he did this for Steve Carlton. So they got a lot out of him. Rick Wise pitched a no-hitter in 1971 against a great team, the Red Big Red Machine. That was Rose, Morgan, Perez, Johnny Bench. Pitched a no-hitter and hit 2 home runs. I almost think that Rick Wise's game is a better game. It wasn't at the same level. It wasn't in the playoffs to get you to the World Series. And Otani's game is great. And I love Otani. However, Rick Wise, a no-hitter, 2 home runs, that's pretty damn good. And he was traded after that season for Steve Carlton. All right, I am going to give you a question to win a pair of Oakley sunglasses. And you listen to Rich Gannon. You can go back and listen to it. I'll have a question regarding, and I'm going to give you the question. Answer it correctly by midnight on Friday, October 24th. Watch my show on Saturday, October 28th at 8 a.m. live on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, Facebook, Instagram. Subscribe to YouTube, and you'll be notified as soon as the show comes on. The winner will be randomly chosen from all correct entries. Rich Gannon talked about where the Eagles lack identity. He got kind of specific where the Eagles lack identity. And that's the question to win the pair of Oakley sunglasses. All right. A couple of the comments here. And I want to thank people, and I'm going to mention it again. I lost my best friend today. And my family lost their best friend today. And people are sorry to hear about that. Patty's so sick of AJ's social media posts. Don't hit send. Patty, was a typo there. Don't hit send or post. Don't hit send. Whenever you're thinking, AJ, whenever you're thinking posting something on social media, don't hit send. And you can't turn them off. Somebody said, do I think Otani and Judge take steroids? No. No, I do not think they think, Otani was great in Japan. I don't think he takes steroids. I mean, let's get over that. Thanks for the compliments on the show. And Rich Gannon is great. George is in Marco Island, Florida tonight. Hey, George. See, you can listen to this podcast anywhere. Tony says, I think BG's in great shape. However, I think the injury to his elbow before the Super Bowl championship will be okay. But your body sometimes is trying to tell you something. Sometimes trying to tell you something. And sometimes you got to listen. Sometimes you just got to listen to your body. All right. Sometimes you just got to listen. But I wish BG the best. Great guy. Great guy. Wonderful guy. Oh, yeah, he's going to change things in the locker room. Well, the locker room should have been fine anyway. So whatever. But I want to thank you. But before I go, and this kind of took me out of the sadness that I had today. I and my family lost our best friend, our dog Lila. May she rest in peace. She had cancer for 6 months. She was hanging in there, but today she just, she was going downhill, and it was time. And we took her over to a place called Pinnacle, which handles dogs and do a great job there. Pinnacle does a great job. They're in, I guess, near Concordville. It's right off of Route 1. But the one thing I'll always miss, dogs are loyal, dogs are lovable, and how can they not? Look at her face. It just makes me a little sad just to look at her, because I would see that face every day. Lila, you'll go up and see the 4 other dogs that we had, and you'll join them, and hopefully, hopefully you have hope hopefully you have a great time. Rest in peace, little girl. Rest in peace. You were a pleasure for all of us. Thanks. You will be missed more than you know. And everybody have a good night.